Welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting.
Welcome back to the Gottesdienst crowd. This is Jason Braaten, your host. Today we have back with us Dave Petersen. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you.
We are looking at the gospel reading for the first Sunday around Epiphany. It is from Luke chapter 2, verses 41 to 52. I'll go ahead and read that in the English Standard Version. Now, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem searching for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." And he said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. All right. So, maybe just a little bit of not only context of this particular text, but why is this the first Sunday in Epiphany? How does this kind of deal with the revealing of God in the flesh during that season?
Well, in Luke's gospel, it's really kind of the end of the birth narrative, right? What's going to happen next is Jesus is going to get baptized. So I think it serves a very similar function in the church year as well. It sits between Epiphany, so the coming of the wise men, and the baptism, which is the octave of Epiphany. So this is the Sunday between those two things. And then, the next Sunday, then we're going to start getting this series of miracles and the more kind of, the signs, right, that reveal his divinity. This is a sort of revealing as well, but I think it's more of a bridge. It's also, it's got a chronological connection, and it's got a kind of theological development that we're moving from Christmas to the miracles, right? From the boy Jesus to his ministry.
Okay,
does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's the next step.
Yeah, there's no real miracle here unless you're going to try to, which I don't think we should say, that Jesus' understanding of his mission is a miracle. But I don't think we should, I wouldn't use that language. Of course, I'm kind of fussy about the word. I don't like the word miracle used for things that can be explained naturally.
Oh.
So in other words, I am a legalist and I love to wrangle over words, but so I don't like it when the people somebody is. It seems unlikely that the person's going to be cured of cancer, but she is, right? But she also undergoes all sorts of medical treatment, and the doctors thought the medical treatment had a chance of working. And then the people say that was a miracle. And I'm like, no miracle. So, when Jesus walked on water, that was a miracle, because that was, sort of suspending the normal laws of nature or speeding them up or whatever. So here, what the foreknowledge and the recognition that Jesus has of his purpose and his mission, I don't think is a miracle, unless you're meaning it's just the actual miracle of the incarnation. In fact, the emphasis in here, particularly at the end, where he's subordinated to his parents and where he grows, right, changes both in wisdom, which would be knowledge and how to apply it, and in height. I like that. He gets taller. But even, as I love too how he's depicted with the teachers, that he is subordinated to them as well, right? That he sits in the midst of them, he's asking questions and he's responding. He's not teaching them. They're amazed at the kind of maturity that he has and the insight that he has to put these things together, but he's not yet the teacher. He's only 12. So
do you think that this really kind of sets the stage that he is absolutely human?
Yeah, I think the emphasis here is on his humanity, not on his divinity. It's not a sign of his divinity. I mean, you can't obviously separate those things completely because he is both.
Other than the fact that you do have this reference that he makes to being among his father's things, or as it's translated, his father's house. Right.
But I don't think that's miraculous. I think he always is aware and knows who he is because and I would say it's not so much a characteristic of his divinity as it is of his being without sin.
Yeah.
Right. So we have trouble knowing who we are because we define ourselves by the wrong things, and we're kind of afflicted with uncertainty because of, again, concern for the opinions of men and our own weaknesses and whatever. But he's just freed from that. He's not promoting himself. So there's no false humility in him, and there's no pride in him. It's just, of course, I'm my father's son. Where else would I be?
Yeah. So what you're saying is he knows exactly where he belongs, wherever he's at. He knows where he fits in. He's
always comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That I think is instructive on how often you get St. Paul or, St. Peter talking about finding your place, when he talks about subordination or, get in proper order and so on and so forth. There's always this idea of finding where you've actually been put and placed and remain there, like live there. That's where you should identify. And, I never really kind of made I always knew it, but I never really kind of made the connection out loud that, look, everywhere Jesus is, he knows who he is and he knows where he stands and how he stands in relation to everyone else.
Yeah.
And because
he totally trusts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
he
great.
Trusts his father's goodness. So he's never like we're always second guessing it. I mean, can you imagine being tried by Pilate? Wait a minute, this isn't going right. He's not he knows who he is in relation to Pilate, so he subordinates himself to him. He's right, but at the same time, right, he's not scared of Pilate or worried about Pilate, not doing a good job. I mean, he's like, oh well, God, my father made Pilate the governor, so of course that's good, even though Pilate's doing a terrible job at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you do want to be like Polycarp. You do want to be like Daniel or his three friends. They're thrown into the oven. He's like, well, my God can save us. And even if he doesn't, there is a God.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So that's, what does the Feast of the Passover have to do with what's going on here? Does that help illuminate perhaps what they're talking about even when he's in the temple with the rabbis and the teachers?
I think it does. I think it sets the whole thing right, that he recognizes himself as the Passover lamb. So and I think also this is the reason he stays. So you have this, right? So we should also just say something, right? 12 years old, right? He's on the cusp of maturity, but not quite there, right? He's presumably slightly prepubescent, right?
Okay.
You have this that he's according to habit, right, or custom, that
Yeah.
every year they go to the Passover, and every year when the feast is completed, they leave, right?
Yeah.
And this year he doesn't. And I think that there's a little bit of coloring in verse 43 with this, when the days were finished. So that Jesus remains because he realizes that he is the fulfillment of the Passover, and there's no more need to keep having Passovers.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, it is
There's
not just finished, it's completed, fulfilled, till they
right.
found their telos, found their goal.
Yeah, their end, and and their perfection, right? And which, of course, this is what he'll say on the cross,
Right.
And so I think, why did he not stay the other 11 years? I don't know, but it seems to me that he's staying here because this is where right. He's one of his father's things. He's the Passover lamb. This is what his whole purpose is, to fulfill the temple. He is fulfilling it at that moment. And so, right, it's not the same. That what they did every year, we don't do anymore. So there's that shift, right? There's an eschatological kind of connection there, but also this connection to the cross. And I wonder if, in a way, he's actually, just bear with me for a second, but if he's actually kind of wrong in the sense that he thinks this is it, right? Because the days are finished. I'm staying here. This is where I belong. This is what I'm supposed to do. But look, you're only 12 and you haven't been baptized and you haven't done this other stuff. And it's, he's not morally wrong, but I wonder if it's sort of like when the dead rise, on Good Friday and go into the city, they think it's over. They jump the gun. They're like, oh, look, this is the end, right? All the signs are being fulfilled. And, well, yes, you're not wrong, but you're wrong, right? You've rightly understood the import and the significance of these things, and these are the signs of the end. At the same time, there's this delay because not everybody's been baptized. And I wonder if that's a similar kind of thing here, that he is responding to the Passover as the Passover lamb, and recognizing his place, but not quite recognizing that there's still a delay. I know that's pretty. I wouldn't preach about that. That would either confuse people. But I still think it.
Yeah. So do you think? I know this is kind of jumping ahead. Do you think verse 49, among my father's things? Do you think that has only one reference? Like, do you think that just means the Father in heaven, or does it also mean because he goes back with them? Does it also mean that he must be among Joseph's things? I'm not saying it does, and I'm just curious because he does. He leaves.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. I never thought of it as not meaning only his heavenly Father. I never thought of it being a reference to Joseph. It also seems like it's a bit of a rebuke, right? Well, it is a rebuke, right?
Yeah. So why were you looking for me?
She blames him, and she blames him for their pain, like as though he caused their anxiety, right, by not being where he was supposed to be. Well, listen, so it's like when she says, look, your father and I, right? And then he's like, my father. There is what she's actually in the wrong. She's speaking from pain, from her guilt, and has become defensive. But it seems to me like a contrast actually with Joseph.
Yeah. I think you're right. Now that you point out that preceding verse where she says, your father and I, and he says, yeah, why were you looking for me? Didn't you know I needed to be among my father's things?
Right.
So.
Right. My father knew where I was.
Yeah, exactly. I am never outside of his hand, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are those things in, I mean, it's translated as Father's house. Is that fair?
Or business in King James and New King
Uh-huh.
James. Yeah, I think it is fair, but I don't like it. I mean, it's not. I mean, so the problem is, of course, right, as you literally wouldn't translate it, among my father's things. I would translate it that way because I think it is a. I think he does subordinate himself to his father completely, in that he is just one of the things of the temple,
Mm,
and he's all of the things, but he's one of them also, right? So
yeah.
he's, I mean, most preeminently, he's the sacrifices of the temple, but he's also the high priest. He's also the incense. He's also, right, the temple itself. I mean,
Yeah.
so he's everything and the purpose of the temple, but it's a very humble response that I
Mhm.
don't think, to just say in my father's house, has the same
Yeah.
weight.
I mean, it's almost like the ark has returned
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
temple.
right. Where else? And so, right, to just say in my father's house, I guess, like, to be in my father's house, yeah, it sounds like, he's going to his bedroom, or, I mean, he's got like a place there that's
Mhm.
comfortable, or, in the palace, and that, there, and I don't read it
Yeah.
that way, right? To be
Yeah.
among my father's things is,
I've tended to think to, because it's always this, like, among my, in my, about my father's business or in my father's house. Um, I've tended to explain it as like metonymy, right?
mhm,
When I say this dish is good, I'm not actually eating the plate that the food is on.
right.
I'm talking about everything that's on the plate. So um, I've just tried to explain it. He's talking about everything that happens there, everything
Yeah,
that's in
well,
there, and
right.
everything that is typically going on there. Um, I mean, I'm just curious. Like, is he there during the morning and evening sacrifices, and he's listening and asking questions, and like, what's going on besides the Passover sacrifices?
I mean, I think he's been there for 2.5 days. I think he's been there the whole time.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I think business is a better translation than house.
Yeah.
Uh, but but yeah, I think he's been there the whole time. He never actually left there. So they went there for, at the end of the Passover, they went there for the last whatever, and they left, and he just stayed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Is there?
I don't think, he was like, at his aunt's house for a night or something. And you
It's
got to wonder too, like, what were these teachers think? Like, who is this kid? What does he do? Okay, he's amazing. We're amazed, but, like, where is he eating? Where is he sleeping? Is he?
yeah. Do you think
I
he's
I
fasting this whole time?
I don't know, but I don't think he. My suspicion is he never leaves the temple. So I don't know if they feed him. He probably, he just curls up in a ball in the corner somewhere and sleeps. Um, Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, but they don't, do they take him home? I mean, he's a kid. A 12-year-old kid is, not that big physically,
Yeah.
and um, pretty vulnerable.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well,
I don't know.
my second oldest was 12, and he was almost taller than me. So
That's true. They can be tall. It's at 12, but typically that growth spurt is a little later.
yeah, didn't know. You're right. You're right. Well, it's probably all of the GMOs that they're eating.
Yeah, it
That's
probably
that's
is.
what you read about, right? All right. So is there a significance to the 3 days?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, yeah, this is definitely a foreshadowing, that Jesus is going to be found alive and well on the third day, when he was abandoned by
Mhm.
those who, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they don't betray him, but they fail him.
Do you
They're not
think that,
attentive to him.
I'm just curious, like, do you think that this particular thing happened uh, on the same Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday that
Oh,
happens when he's actually crucified?
huh. So they find him on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I don't. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't. I'd have to consult
Oh, geez. Good
Kepler,
luck with
Johannes
that.
Kepler, for that one.
I know, those guys all dispute that stuff. They calculate. Well, there's a lot of disputing about when is the Passover of at Holy Week, right?
Yeah.
Was it Friday or was it Saturday or Thursday?
I think that there's a book by Steinman where he works all this out. He looks at all the literature and he works it all out and says, "Look, it happened on Friday."
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he works through all of it, and I can't remember, Abraham to Paul, I want to say.
Well, I think
name of the
Edersheim
book. Yeah, go ahead.
Edersheim makes the argument that if it's on Friday, the Passover is on Friday, as John says it is. Well, then you get this because Friday night's the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is they have an extra Passover on Thursday for. If I remember this correctly, I think I am, because of that Passover thing that complicates the celebration, what you can do and how it's observed.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be, Edersheim, I think, makes this argument, there could be two Passovers. So you could have it Thursday and Friday. Like Thursday is like for the professional church workers or something. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly who's impacted by this, but that, I thought I remember reading that years ago and going, it just sounds complicated enough to be convincing, right? We're
Sounds like
recording
something the Jews would do.
What sounds like something we would do. I mean, we all do. You hear this people talk this time all the time. When is your Christmas? Hey, look, buddy, my Christmas is December 25th. I didn't know we got to choose our own. No, right? That's not what we mean. What we mean is like, when's your family going to have its dinner and open presents, right?
Yeah.
And almost actually, none of us just gets away with doing that once on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, right? We always have all these family obligations, and the guy who's a police officer or a nurse, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to make, well, what are we going to do about the nurses? When are they going to have Passover? I can see this being, anyway, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I don't know the book. I'll have to look into the book by Steinman before Easter, but I doubt I can plow through it because that kind of thing does not. I just read the conclusion.
It is. One thing I love about reading Edersheim is he when he discusses all the sacrifices. I mean, particularly during Passover, he just talks about how much blood there is. He's just always talking about. And there were like 5 billion lambs slain, and all the blood was running here and there and everywhere. And he just counts up all of the various sacrifices. It's great.
I love that. Yeah. So when I was first in the ministry, I didn't have a lot of resources. But I had a copy of Luther's works, and I had a copy of The Life and Times of the Messiah. So I'm so glad I did this in hindsight, but it was not deliberate. I read the Genesis lectures and I read Edersheim. That's what I read the first 5 years of the ministry. It's all I read practically. And so both of those, well, I mean, and I just slopped into the Genesis lectures. Nobody told me how brilliant they were or where they fit in the body of Luther's works. I just was teaching, I was brand new to the ministry, and let's do a Bible study on Genesis. I didn't have a commentary on Genesis.
Yeah.
So all I had was Luther's work. So I just read it without and of course, and I loved it, but I didn't recognize its place till later. But then for the Gospels, I was just reading Edersheim, not just, but largely. And I know Edersheim's wonderful.
Yeah.
He's not Lutheran, obviously.
No.
But anyway.
But he does bring this whole, he brings an understanding to the Old Testament, and particularly the ritual, that is very helpful. It's kind of like what Kleinig did for Leviticus. I
thought Edersheim was ethnically a Jew for the longest time. I didn't realize. I don't know where I got the idea. I guess I just made it up. I thought he was a convert to Christianity. He's not.
I did too. He's not.
I mean, obviously he's a Christian.
Yeah.
But he just was interested. He's just a scholar, was interested, and in England. So, anyway.
All right. Well, let's get back to the text.
Okay.
So, what does Jesus mean where he says, "Why were you looking for me"? Is he just simply drawing attention to the next question? Did you not know? Or is this a rebuke to say you kind of fell down on the job?
I think it's definitely a rebuke.
Okay.
That they weren't attending. And I mean, right. I mean, it's kind of like, well, because she's just said, right, you caused us pain by being, you know, a negligent child, right? Not paying attention to us the way you should have, right?
Okay.
And of course,
So
it's
she accuses him of sin.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he's like, well, really? Why were you looking for me again? Because you lost me, right? I think, and you should have known, right, where I was going to be, because you know what I'm about. And yes, I'm your son and I will subordinate myself to you. At the same time, right, I am the Messiah, and there's a clear hierarchy here of what's going on. And I'm not going to forget about it. So, yeah, I think when he says, why did you seek me? It's definitely a response to her accusation. It's easy to imagine that he was easy to neglect, right? Because, he was just so attentive and so obedient. So, she didn't have to tell him something twice. She didn't even have to tell him to do certain things, because he could just look and see what she needed and anticipate, because he was that loving. It's not hard for me to imagine why his brothers didn't like him. He must have been a constant source of comparison that you just couldn't live up to in a way.
Yeah.
Not that he, of course, engaged in that, but I mean, other people were bound to.
Well, I mean, I've always kind of been curious too, in comparing Jesus and his relationship with his brothers and the relationship between Cain and Abel. So, Cain is named because I've acquired the man, the Lord. And Abel's name means vanity. Like, this is all like worthlessness, breathlessness. So every time Abel was called to supper, he was hearing that, your birth was in vain, because we already got the Messiah. We already got the one. And yet it's Abel who is the one who causes jealousy in Cain. So because of the faithfulness aspect. Right. So is there any correlation that even though you have someone who is submissive, obedient, who subordinates themselves in the best possible way, why is it that causes such angst in others? Is it simply because it points out in a very poignant way our own failures?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think I think it's just the kind of communist principle, right? That no one can excel because it makes the rest of us look bad, or kind of, like union politics gone deeply awry. Don't be too productive, because then everybody will have to work hard. I mean, I think that's
scale.
Yeah. I mean, right.
Because the ones who, the guys who work hard are, rewarded in the same way. Yeah. Or, the whole thing, what do they call you when you get D's in class? Pastor.
Yeah. Right. So I think that, you could also think of the prodigal son, right? The older brother. I mean, there's lots of this. And I mean, you wouldn't have to even go to the Bible. You could actually just look at your own life and your own jealousies and resentments, that I like to make a big stink about the difference between the words envy and jealousy, right? So jealousy is wait a minute, how's this go? Well, jealousy is more generic. It's schadenfreude, right? Schadenfreude is happy at someone else's sadness, but which is pretty gross. But then envy is really sadness at someone else's happiness. And I think, that's, so to be sad because someone else is happy, to be sad because someone else is successful, that is really a gross instinct that just jumps up in us really quickly. And I think social media has, in a way, this whole, right. I'm seeing what other people, this happened to them. It cost me nothing. It hurt me nothing, but I'm sad about it because, that's really wicked. Yeah. I mean, both Schadenfreude and NVR, but there's just that kind of brokenness in us that only thinks about ourselves and really, really believes that if anybody else gets ahead, it's to my detriment.
Yeah, I try to avoid using the word jealous in a negative way.
Because of God.
Yeah,
being jealous. Yeah,
because there is, obviously a real positive aspect to having jealousy. That you are protective of that which belongs to you.
And you're protective because you believe it's valuable.
Yes, exactly. And so I try to, when I'm speaking of jealousy in the negative sense, I always try to use envy.
Yeah. Well, you can use Schadenfreude too, because it's the other aspect of it. It's closely related, I think. Plus it's fun to say.
Makes you sound smart.
Well, you have, of course, God being jealous, but also I talk in this, like when I talk to couples, I do talk about the goodness of that actually there should be some jealousy. And of course it can turn into manipulation and anxiety and all sorts of things. But look, if you don't think if you're like, well, nobody else would want my wife, so I'm not worried about it. I mean, that's kind of a problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think also the same thing for fathers with their daughters.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Right? I mean, you can't wear that, or any number of things. If we had a little more of that jealousy, that in a positive way,
right,
the world would be a better place. Let me just say that.
Yeah, right. Right. So, but jealousy can very quickly turn into simply,
I don't think that's our
pride, control. Well, that happens too. I mean, for sure, manipulation. Whatever. So, false accusations. It's a problem.
Okay.
These are real problems. These are not imaginary problems.
I'm not saying they're imaginary. I just don't think that it is the primary thing that we face right now.
It's probably I think it's being faced, or maybe not being faced, but it's happening in lots of places. I think it is dominant in society. I think probably it's not the dominant reality amongst like active churchgoers. Mm-hmm. But okay. I do think that with like fringe churchgoers, it actually is pretty common.
Okay.
It's just
you've been around
one of the kind of ways.
Me, so
it's just one of the ways that I have seen marriages break or be dysfunctional regularly. So
because there's too much jealousy.
But what happens is the jealousy has become this manipulative, controlling kind of demanding sort of thing. So, and then it creates this kind of, and it's all, it's just so silly in a way, but it all just kind of comes down in many ways just to eighth commandment stuff, right? To speak well of one another, to think well of one another. And, when we start to imagine bad motives in our spouse and assign those to her, we're in big trouble. And that's what jealousy kind of is, right? It's not just about, other men are finding her attractive, but she's flirting with them. She enjoys that attention. She's right. And so now
sometimes that's true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but
in almost 70% of the cases.
Well, it still needs to be expressed and talked about in a way that is actually supportive and loving and kind. And so if this is the case, look, this guy is paying attention to you in a way that makes me uncomfortable. And then if the immediate follow up is, and you love it, right? That's so it has to be talked about in a way that's actually, leading, teaching, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. she needs to then respond to the fact that this is difficult for you to see or whatever, and she needs to take pains to keep it from happening. But if you're accusing her of, she's gonna see that as rightly as, kind of a charge of unfaithfulness, and then then the other side of that is, are you paying attention? Is he paying attention to her? Why isn't he paying attention to her like that? The only time he finds her attractive is when he thinks other people find her attractive, kind of. So there's a lot of mess there.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's all right. So back to the text, I guess.
Please. Yeah.
We
have a textual thing in verse, where was it? Where Joseph and his mother, there it is, verse 43. So the received text or whatever has Joseph and his mother, but the critical text has his parents.
Oh.
I kind of think maybe his parents here is better. I don't know that I can't judge that textual criticism stuff. I don't know enough about it, but I do get this. I can understand the philosophy in this one, if this is in case where parents is a more difficult reading, and where kind of pious Christians might want to emphasize the divine origin and the virgin birth by not calling Joseph his parent. I think I've been on this kick lately about really defending the Joseph as the father. Because I don't think God endorses single mothers. And I think that the betrothal actually is significant, that the pregnancy is not announced, and the overshadowing of the Holy Spirit does not come before the betrothal. It comes before, and betrothal is a legal reality at that time that is not parallel to engagements in our society. Right. So just get over that, German ancestry Lutherans, right? When Walther talks about, right, breaking off an engagement is tantamount to divorce, or engagement is tantamount to marriage, whatever he says, false. It's not true in America today. But he's basing that, on kind of German laws and also the laws, both in Judah, both according to the religious law and according to the civil law, that when you're betrothed, you've got the legal requirements of marriage, even though it hasn't been consummated, and you're not fully man and wife. So anyway, all that to say that God actually places the Messiah into a family, not to a single mother, and that the Messiah needs a father and Mary needs a husband to raise the Messiah. So this whole thing of adoption making real children, right? And even though we're going to have this little emphasis in 48 and 49. So I'm good with that reading of parents, and I wonder if actually that wouldn't be helpful in this case. And I think it's something we can talk about. There is this weird modern idea that somehow biology matter. So from the Bible's point of view, right? They don't care about biology at all. We're the true Israel. We're the sons of Abraham, right?
Well,
Esau
they care that he's from the line of David.
They do care about that, but he's from the line of David through Joseph in Matthew
and Mary,
in Luke, I think. Yeah. So Luke cares about the blood. Matthew cares about the legality. Mm-hmm. The legality is more significant than blood, I think. What matters is, right, we're the sons of Abraham. It doesn't matter. We're adopted into that family, grafted in, from Romans, 14? But that's real. That's the absolute true thing. And who cares what stick the ground, so what, where you started.
Yeah. But if you look at, so the Jews are, if Matthew is arguing to the Jews, it makes sense that he would look at the legality.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But, if Luke's speaking to the Greeks, maybe he wants to emphasize the blood.
Right. No, I think that's right. But I think we have become,
either way, they're both.
I know, but I think because of our sort of post-enlightenment kind of, science mind, DNA loving kind of stuff, we care about that side of it, I think, too much, and way too much.
Okay.
And we need to look, we wouldn't even be, if adoption didn't make real children, we're not real children. Nobody is. God sets the solitary into families. I mean, all that stuff. And right. To really be a son of God is to be adopted.
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't care. I mean, that's the whole thing in Romans 9. God doesn't care what your genealogy is in terms of your blood. He cares about faith. So anyway, I like parents in verse 43.
Yeah. I mean, talk more about what you mean by he doesn't care. Because it does spend quite a bit of time talking about the nations in heaven and the distinctions and the uniqueness. So it's like he does care about what makes each ethne, right, each nation distinct.
Yeah, but that's like talking about your children that one of them has blonde hair and one of them has black hair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he loves them in their peculiarities. You don't wish that your black-haired daughter had blonde hair. You love her just like she is.
Okay.
So you love the peculiarities and her strengths and her whatever. But that's not what makes her your daughter. You're not like, yeah, my daughters have to have black hair. Right. So that when he's talking about the nations, he's rejoicing in the peculiarities and the virtues and the strengths of the individuals and their histories. But he's not picking one, like, I like my blonde daughters better than my black haired daughters.
Right.
I think that's all that is.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good clarity. Because some people would hear, what do you mean he doesn't care? He talks about this stuff all the time. That's
yeah. Right. He counts every hair on the head, so he cares about the details, but right.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
All right. So we talked about the 3 days. Why are they amazed, the teachers?
Yeah, this is great. I love this. This is maybe the most important passage, actually, I think. They're astonished at his understanding, and this is apokrinomai, which literally means to judge again, and it has to do with answering. But here it doesn't mean answering questions. I would translate this as replying, right? So wait a minute, I'm in the wrong place. I jumped ahead of myself, didn't I?
Synese is the understanding.
Yeah, he's understanding.
Synesis.
Right. Well, yeah, right. Which is a different word. I looked up the etymology of the English word synthesis, and it's not the same, but they are sort of related. So you've got understanding and asking.
Synthesis is to see together, isn't it?
No, it's to stand. It said it was to stand together. It's tithomi, to stand two things together.
Okay.
Put together, yeah. Placed together. There you go. Yeah. So it was the next one the next verse. Let's see. He's listening to them. He's asking them questions. They're astounding at his understanding and his answers. So his answers there are not, they're not like quizzing him, which books did Moses write? And he's telling them the answers. Or they're not asking him, what's the Messiah going to be like? And then he teaches them. It's rather that he's replying to them, right? So he's conversing with them, but it's in a subordinate position is the point. I think when they're astonished at his understanding and answers, at least for me, I hear this word answer in that context, and it sounds to me like they're asking him questions and he's giving these brilliant theological responses. Like they're asking him, why was God silent? Yeah, like he's teaching, and he's not teaching. They're just amazed at what an insightful student he is, that he's able to think analytically, that he is synthesizing the scriptures, that he sees the kind of complete picture, but he's looking to them to teach, which is amazing, right? That he submits to that he recognizes their authority, and that they actually have wisdom in their office given by God to bestow upon him.
Mm-hmm.
And he is at that kind of amazing age, where really this happens in such an interesting way, right? That children at this time in life are particularly, right, they're just learning to think analytically is what it comes down to.
Okay.
Right. You're able to have a really meaningful conversation about deep things with 12-year-olds because they can make analogies, they can make comparisons, they can recognize data and situations from other things that they know and apply it to this. Right? This is really what I would say is real thinking. They're able if they're taught. I mean, obviously, a lot of 12-year-olds aren't because they're not taught any of this, but they have the capacity for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're actually able to read deeply and carefully.
Yeah.
So, and these, by the way, I mean, these are the skills that, from my perspective, are absolutely the most significant and essential for civilization and for full humanity and for theology, and precisely the thing that is just so devastatingly unusual screens have just destroyed this.
Yeah. Is there any significance to the word for they were amazed here? Because it's not thaumazo.
I know.
We get our word ecstasy from it. And usually, not usually, but often in the New Testament, it's used for like when they're out of their mind, like psychic derangement.
Right. I don't think so.
You don't think there's any significance?
And then you're going to get Joseph and Mary they're amazed with a different word, isn't it? Splagnizomai, or not splagnizomai, that's compassion. It's I'm going to look at what verse was that? 48. So it's a synonym. I don't think there's any.
You mean when they were astonished in verse 48?
Yeah, there it is. Ex eplag which
overwhelmed.
Yeah, ekplasamai. So there are two, and this word here is existemi, right, which is ecstasy. I think they're just synonyms for amazed, astonished, impressed. I wouldn't make too much of them.
Okay.
I mean, how would you? What?
I don't. Usually, it incorporates this is what St. Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians when he's going through his big list, when he's in the third heaven, or this is when the demon-possessed man, they say, he is out of his mind. This word is used, or being, so I'm just, it's like, what could the significance be?
I mean, I just don't see anything in the context that really that would give me the sense that this means anything other than surprised, astonished, wondering. I certainly don't see anything negative in it, or anything, I guess, that significant about any nuance other than they're just. I mean, I like the translation amazed or astonished. I think that conveys it. I wouldn't translate it. All who heard of him were out of their mind,
no,
or out of their bodies.
Well, I guess I'm just curious. If there's some Greek understanding of this within kind of the Greek literature that is indicative of this as divine or something like that. Are these the words used of Zeus and or the oracles or things like that would indicate we're dealing with the divine here, not just something ordinary? Does that make sense?
It does, but I think they are dealing with something ordinary. I mean, I think his understanding and yeah, but I think his understanding and his answers are impressive, right? And create a certain amount of awe, but I don't think they're to the point of miraculous, right? He's not speaking in unlearned languages. He's not speaking, he's not revealing secrets or, the future that hasn't been shown. He's not he's just an incredibly good student, and most of that being a good student doesn't have to do with his intellectual abilities. It's a moral statement because he's actually just doing the work. He's attentive in a way that, again, this, what would it be like to be around somebody who just doesn't sin? I mean, that in of itself is just got to be an astonishing.
Well, you know my
thing.
wife, Dave.
I was just going to say, right, other than Lauren, who is there that doesn't sin?
Well, it just was a question. I'd expected it to be thaumazo, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, or at least to use the same word twice, or the
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the one is overwhelmed in a negative sense,
overwhelmed,
right? So that they were overwhelmed with the difficulty that was coming. Isn't this the same thing that we just talked about this in Luke, later in Luke? I think it was Advent 2, when they're overwhelmed and overcome by the distress of the nations and things like that. I think that's the same word, that they are distressed, that they are
really. Well, let's look that up.
Is that Luke 21?
I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Oh, here it is. Verse 25, right there will be signs. Men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things that are coming on the earth. You think it's there? 21, 26?
Like 25 through...
yeah, I don't see that word.
Okay. I thought we just talked about this, where it was being overcome and...
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, that's not in this particular, but I wonder if there's let's see here. Men's hearts failing them. Yeah.
It could have been in Trinity too. I mean, Trinity also. It could have been
somewhere in the season.
But I definitely remember having a conversation with you about this, the sense of this word as being overcome with emotion. Maybe it was even...
You're talking about the ekplesomai, being overcome.
Yeah,
I didn't know that had a negative connotation. I just thought it meant be amazed, but I mean I don't know anything about it. So
yeah, thought maybe it was.
Well, sometimes we have fruitless ideas like that. You might be right, but I just don't.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to listen to them all, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
So, all right. So you don't think there's anything significant about it?
I don't.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's significant that they're amazed that he's impressive, but so that we already talked about the Father's things stuff. You do have this that kind of interesting. They're amazed by his understanding. That's a noun. But then in Mary and Joseph don't understand what Jesus has said to them is the verb form of that word, right? So he has an ability to think in a way that they don't seem to. I don't like in verse 51, what was the translation?
How did they not get it? That's what I don't get. If this makes sense to me, what
really?
Did they not understand?
So I think understanding has to do with putting all of it together, right? So they understand. I mean, obviously they understand the words that he says, and I think even understand the claim that he's making, that he's one of his Father's things, or that this is where he belongs. But what they haven't done is they haven't put this together with the rest of the Old Testament, or even with the prophecies, and that they'd heard, like from Elizabeth and Simeon and likes. So they just haven't put it all together. I think that they've had 12 they were in exile for part of that, but they've had 12 relatively peaceful years where nobody's trying to kill Jesus, and he's a pretty good boy, and so I think they become sort of complacent, which is part of the reason they neglect him. And then, when this is, now he's making this claim and they understand it. I mean, they know what he's saying, but they just can't quite perceive the reality of this and the sword that's going to come and pierce their own hearts. So
you
it's
think
probably
this
more
is
of a moral.
you think this is a kind of like we know intellectually that a student is not above his teacher, and that we should expect the world not to love us, and yet we don't always put it together when they don't, that this is
Right.
what it means to be a Christian.
Sure.
That
Or,
kind of
or
thing.
even that, I think that's part of it. I think also it's, it's sort of like when you get the cancer diagnosis and the doctor says you got 9 months to live,
Mhm.
and you think, no, I'm going to fight this. Fight isn't even the right actual verb, but anyway,
Delay.
but that's
I'm going to delay
right.
it.
But there is this sort of like kind of unwillingness to comprehend or to face our own mortality and our own weaknesses. And, she's just come out of this defensive thing, right? I mean, she's feeling guilty and she responds and lashes out a bit. And, I just think they're probably not spiritually and mentally prepared enough. They need time to absorb this, as we all do, right? I mean, at least my experience, not just my own personal experience with faith, but my experience of evangelism and of people coming to the faith is that it's always slow. I haven't had any Damascus Road events where I say Jesus loves you and the person, boom, believes. It seems like it's like long conversations over months, if not years. And then afterwards, you're like, when did you become a believer? And the guy's like, I don't know.
Mhm.
It wasn't an on off switch. It seems
Yeah.
like, so, I mean, Mary pondering these words in her heart, that's the life of faith, I'd say.
Yeah.
She's trying to come
Is
to
it kind of like coming to the realization that your kids will actually leave the house, get married, and have their own kids?
Yeah. Or come to the realization that you can't make them behave. I don't know. It's kind of like, because part of it's like facing a hard truth, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a kind of an unwillingness to, maybe it's sort of like I'm so mad at these people adults that believe in Santa Claus and try to get children to believe in Santa Claus. And I just can't, and they're supposed to be Christian. I just can't even understand it. I mean, right? But you know what I'm talking about.
Well, this is
They're just
Fritz.
absolute.
He loves Santa Claus.
Does he?
I think so.
Oh my good. Well, he hopefully doesn't try to. I mean, but like this insistence that like Santa Claus is good, and that believing in Santa Claus is good.
Oh.
It's just like, I just can't.
Do we have a lot? Is that a problem? Is that a big deal?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I've
Well,
never
it's
encountered
again,
it where it's like an insistence, I mean.
Oh, well, you're not pushing the right buttons. You could find it, I bet. Do you have a, just go ahead and say at some Advent midweek service that Santa Claus isn't real and that children
I've
shouldn't
said
believe
these things
in.
Before.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Good.
everyone
they should know it, but I've caught a lot of flack for that over the years. There's a weird kind of like Disney loving nostalgia that just thinks these things. Well, okay, maybe it's, I don't know. Anyway, There's a weird kind of suspension of reason that we do to ourselves when we just don't want to face the truth. I guess that's
I don't know.
what
I mean, I
this
think
is.
there's a sense in which, I talk about the man in the moon,
Okay.
or it's
What are you
made of
talking about?
cheese, or to my kids, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah, but it's obviously obviously fiction, right? You don't actually try to get them to believe in it,
no, but they do for a while.
do they?
Yeah, when they're little kids, and then you're like, no, that's a joke, like Santa Claus. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not. Maybe I'm not as hardcore against it. I mean, I don't believe he actually exists, other than
Well, that's
Saint
good. I'm
Nicholas.
glad to hear that.
But I mean, I don't have a problem with people, saying, all right, go to bed, Santa will come.
Sure. I mean, I'm not against, yeah. Well, maybe I'm a little against that, but
Yeah.
anyway,
Which is fine. You can be. But
thank you. I don't like Halloween either. So, I have a pietistic kind of leanings, I
I
guess.
don't like gory Halloween, but I don't mind dressing
Right.
up and giving out candy and
I don't
that
mind
sort of.
I don't mind the dressing up, but I definitely don't like the gory stuff. I don't like how much people like Halloween.
Yeah.
That bothers me. That it's such a big party thing, and the decorating, and it's like it's bigger than Christmas, and it's anti-family, and so that and there's all of the playing around with satanic stuff. All that bothers me. And then on top of all that, I'm actually kind of against giving candy to children.
Oh yeah.
In large quantities. I mean, we just don't live in a place where my grandchildren, if they were only getting candy, at Halloween and at Easter, okay, pour it on. But I mean, candy is a daily act, you know what I mean? I mean, it's
Sure.
Well, this is why I'm so popular with my own people.
Yeah. Well, major in the minors, man. No,
There you
just
go.
kidding.
Be angry all the time. That's my motto.
What is increased in wisdom and stature?
Yeah, that's so lovely that he changes. I mean, this is a mystery, right? That the divine has become a man, and we talk about this a lot at Christmas time, right? That he nurses, that he needs his diaper changed. But here, I mean, I think this is even more shocking in a way, that he learns, that he grows, that he changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's astounding, right? That he's alive.
What I find astounding is that he does this without sin.
Well, yeah.
Without ever getting a problem wrong. So how often is it the case that we learn by experience in the opposite? That is not by doing things right, but by doing things wrong.
Well, he gets to see other people do stuff wrong. I think he could learn from watching his brothers do stuff wrong. He could benefit from that. I think he can also, I wouldn't, the old saw about can he cut a board too short? I think, yes, I would say he could. I think he.
You don't think he measured twice and cut once?
I think, I think he could learn. I think he could make errors that he could learn from. That he could even potentially misunderstand directions that cause errors. I think he could do that without moral failing, and I think that's probably. I wouldn't be dogmatic about that, but I think that's probably part of the human experience and part of growth. So,
yeah, I don't.
Pick the wrong strategy for, he could be in a cross country race and, not understand how it works and start off sprinting or not be properly hydrated and end up losing the race because he's, you know what I mean? And then go, okay, that was a mistake. I did that the wrong way. And I didn't understand what my coach said, and then do better next time. That doesn't seem to me to violate in any way. In fact, to not have an experience like that almost seems.
Well, I guess talk more about that, because I think in our people's minds, mostly they think in terms of his perfection as absolute perfection.
Right.
And so I think they would hear what you just said and say, so you're saying that he was sinful.
Right. But
because,
I think this
if that's a mistake or if that's not perfect, then it must be sin. So what are what's the spectrum that you kind of put that on in terms of gradations or shading to indicate this is not actual sin, and he still keeps his perfection, even though he learned by, in some cases, mistake
or failure. Yeah. Because I don't think failure is sin. It's not. It can't. The problem is we don't make mistakes without sinning, right? Yeah. The reason
we don't even understand how we can't be tempted without sinning.
Right. So I cut a board too short because I was goofing off when my dad was telling me what to do, right? I wasn't really listening. Or I was daydreaming about, curvy blondes when I was measuring. I've got all sorts of ways I'm distracted by sin and not attentive to the task and not, but at the same time, right? So, we don't know what it is to not sin. That's really the issue, I think. So it's just impossible really for us to really imagine it, but I think we need to strive toward it anyway. And I think that failure and mistakes in this fall, because he has to live in the fallen world. So even though he isn't fallen, right? So you could say, okay, he misunderstood what the coach said. The coach isn't perfect. So the coach doesn't give perfect instructions. And so some of it's a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. Well, it's not the moral fault of his attentiveness, but it could be the fault of his immaturity, that he just doesn't have the tools yet to process the information. Now, the moral failure is on the coach to not recognize that and not to present it in a way that's appropriate, but it still causes, him to fail or whatever.
So like applying this in reverse, is that what happened here?
That he misunderstood Barry and Joseph in some way?
Yeah, or that they didn't.
Or they didn't communicate their intentions to leave that.
They assumed.
Yeah, they assumed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's clear that they just assumed, they just expected him because of the other 11 years to just be right where they thought he would be and thought he should be. And then they were so confident in that they can go an entire day without ever checking on him. Then they get to the camp that night and start looking around finally and can't find him. And then panic ensues. I think it was negligence on their part, but it's kind of understandable. Why didn't he know? Then I suppose you could ask the question, why didn't he know that's what they expected? Or did he know that that's what they expected? And in a sense, he didn't care because he had other things to do. And
so is this also kind of the beginning of, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head and all that?
I think it's definitely right. He is, it's the separation of him from his mother and father. It is this kind of rite of passage, the foreshadowing or he's going to go now and be subordinate and he's going to grow, but we can already see that Mary and Joseph aren't sort of equal to the task and he's going to have to do this alone, which, we always knew and he always knew in a sense, but it also, right. They're not equal to the task. The disciples aren't going to be equal to the task. Nobody is equal to this except him.
So what does it mean to increase in favor with God?
It's just that I think there's this great piece by Chesterton about how does this go? About the daisies. He says, maybe not every daisy has to be exactly the same, but God still has like the joy of a child. And he just keeps saying, do it again, do it again. So like because we are jaundiced by sin and always kind of lusting for novelty, we get bored with daisies, but like, and so, right. Children don't, right. Children are always do it again, do it again, do it again. Right. And, I know too. And it's, and then to our shame, we get bored with them.
Yeah. I know.
But so I love this. This is a great little essay. So Chesterton's just like God has this joy in creation that he can just say how many, for thousands of years, daisies have been coming up exactly the same, right? Thousands of them a day. And God just goes, do it again, do it again. He loves it every time. And there's this kind of amazing increasing joy where because it's sort of, this is the abundance of who God is. So he can delight in his son, even though it's full, it can increase, right?
Well, so in verse 40, you get, he grew, he became strong, and he was filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. And then in 52, you get, he increases in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with man. What is it in this between? What's going on? Is there something that happens here in particular that indicates this increase in favor of God, with God and man?
I think it's his subordination to Mary and Joseph.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
He's obedient.
Mm-hmm.
What were you thinking?
But I was going to certainly connect it to that, but I just was curious, was there anything else? That there is a certain aspect in which he is subordinating himself to his Father in heaven by being among his Father's things too.
Yes.
But it is by subordination.
Yeah. Yeah, because, right, and I think that's why it can increase. Like, what does God the Father love the most,
Mm-hmm.
right, is the obedience on the cross. And he's progressing towards that. He is, right, what he's doing every day is fulfilling that.
Mm-hmm.
Because he has entered into time, so there is a passage of time for him.
So is there a sense where, in applying this, in terms of our Christian life, that you can talk about how our Lord is able to subordinate himself in the garden and on the cross because he has practiced it all these years.
Oh, good one.
And so we are called to increase in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man by practicing subordination, finding our places. I mean, is that an application here, that seeing where we fit in our Father's house and among our Father's things, whether that's our biological or adoptive fathers or our Father in heaven?
Well, in some ways, to not even see a distinction between those two.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But absolutely. Yeah, I think that's good. I love the way you're using this word subordinate, by the way, as being like in place, which means also, to not only to be a man under authority is also to have authority, mm-hmm. right? So we have our own subordinates, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. I mean, to take your order, to take orders, and to be properly oriented. I mean, so this is like worship, and I really like orientation. I like this being ordered and oriented in the proper direction to the proper things. Things that are appropriate and proper, and in the way that the scriptures talk about it, because it is very orderly then. And that's the whole point of this subordination. It is being in order.
Yeah, which is right, which is both to be under and to be over simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in different, and then also for a purpose, right?
Yeah.
So never just for an aesthetic design or just but actually to have a mission to accomplish.
Yeah, it's not arbitrary.
Yeah. These relationships.
Because I'm a man or someone else is a woman, or there is an order to things, and it's for a purpose. Because this is how God designed it. In other words, that our lives have design, not just the fact that our eye looks designed or that the cosmos looks designed. Life, how it is lived, has a design to it. There is nothing in that is created that doesn't have a design, and we are still created. God is still giving life.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
That's good.
That might, as they say, that might preach. Any final thoughts? Anything that we didn't get to on your list?
Let's see here. Well, we didn't really talk about this words of so the New King James translates that the words that Mary ponders in her heart as things, which is offensive to me. And it's the same word that's used for word when above for the words of Jesus, so I think she's contemplating words, not things. She's contemplating what he said. I Anyway, I think there's some encouragement in that, right? I think there's
would
some
you say
encouragement.
matters? These matters, that's a possible translation for Remata.
I know, but I don't like it. I don't think it's sayings. I mean, it can mean those other things, but I think in this context, it's whatever. If you want to make it that way, I suppose she contemplates what happened as well.
Yeah.
But I think it really is about, how what he said to her is what really pierces, and what she has to live with, and what she has to strive to understand.
Yeah. That I must be among my Father's things.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, he does say that in a context amongst his Father's things. So, I mean, that's not insignificant. But I think to see Jesus actually working to learn, right, that it's not just handed to him because he's God, even though he's, that according to, right. So there's that he subjects himself to imperfect teachers and parents.
Yeah.
And that those parents and teachers actually are a blessing to him despite their imperfections.
Yeah.
Right. And then that he endorses authority and order, right? Both of his parents and of the teachers that those are all kinds of, I think, very encouraging things. And then to kind of think about the words of Jesus that have put us in our stations in life, and how we would find, in that we find duty, right? I mean, this is how we know what sins to confess. We can consider our place in life according to the 10 Commandments, but also to see that to be placed in that order means to be placed with others who are also performing duties to us, right? That we have teachers, that we have parents, that God is providing for us through them. It's not just duty. There's also reception.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
That's my final thought.
All right. Finally, you got one. Well, thanks for your time, Dave. And I look forward to chatting with you on Epiphany 2.
All right. Thanks, Jason.